Well, hey folks, thanks for stopping in today at the shop. Hey, let me ask you a question. Have you ever wanted to upgrade your rear end? Now, words of wisdom, don't ever ask that question on the first date. But today we're doing air ride suspension with a compressor, a dump valve, a couple of air shocks, some lines, some wires, a relay. That's pretty much it. You're going to be surprised how simple it is to upgrade your bike to a air ride suspension in the rear. So we're going to go just from scratch, building our own kit, looking at kits, and routing our lines and wires and hoses and relays and all that fun stuff. So welcome back to Butler Customs Motorcycle Shop. Now I do have this bike already stripped down, but that's for a custom build with the fenders and swoop bags and all that. So you don't have to strip your bike down to just the wheel when you do your own kit. You do have to take the bags off and either one or two of the side panels. You do need access to your battery, and that's pretty much it. You don't have to take the fender off or anything like that. And so I chose this bike because it's already stripped down. I'm actually doing another bike on the other lift after this, and it's getting an air tank, which this one is not. And I'll show you the difference in that as well. So let's come on over to the table, lay out everything we have and things you'll need, and just let's do some explaining and go over things so you got a good understanding of what's happening when you hit a little switch up or hit a little switch down. All right, guys, we're here at my desk. Let me clear some of this junk away. And that way we've got room to look at things. Now you can buy the kits. Oh, by the way, if you hear the humming in the background, that's the AC blowing right on my neck. And no, I ain't turning it off. All right, so you can buy kits. Now there's different options in kits. This is a kit that the customer bought. Comes with one dump valve, a fuse. Well, let's just get it out. That way you can see everything that you're probably going to need if you do your own. All right, airline. You will need airline. They usually provide enough depending on how you route and angle your shocks and where you can put the compressor, but you might need more airline. This airline, air hose, is plastic. And so when you cut this, you've got to be very careful how you cut it because you can smash it. So most kits will come with a little cutter that helps you cut so that you don't actually smash in the diameter, inside diameter of the hose. So that's handy to have. Now if you need more hose, maybe you're running an air tank and it's got to go somewhere weird, you can actually buy this hose, usually locally, if you have an area in your city or closest city that has parts for 18-wheelers. These air lines are used on 18-wheelers as well for like seat air rides and things like that. So usually an 18-wheeler store, parts store, will have airlines that will fit your bike. Do not use anything else except these. They're like a hard plastic. If you use rubber, they'll bust. Anything else will crimp. These you got to use. So we've got that. What else? All right, we have a dump valve. This is what, when you hit the switch down to let the bike down, this magnetic switch will get power from the switch and dump out the air. And that's what makes your bike go down, and it goes down rather quickly. So you need the dump valve, and that's all that's for, is just to make the bike go down, to lose pressure in the lines by opening up in here. See the hole there? And you can actually adjust the rate of how quick that air flows out of the lines. So you can make the bike go down slower or as fast as you want. You'll see all these T connectors here, a variety of styles and types. And this kit came with several different kinds, and that's nice to have, because when you run from one shock to your compressor, you'll need a T, compressor, shock, going back out, dump valve as well, other shock as well. So you'll need some, and I like that they got a variety of them, because these, you can run one line in and two lines straight out. This, you run one line in and two lines out in a T. So it gives you different options. So you need those. Also, fittings. Now these fittings will go on the air compressor, and they've got a little kind of spring end on it. That's what your air hose actually snaps into. So you will put this in, it'll lock in, and you push it in to lock. You'll hear it maybe click. If you don't hear the click, you'll feel it bottoming out. And then when you go to pull on this, it won't come out. The way you get the airline out is you actually have to compress this to get the airline out. So these fittings will go on your valve, dump valve here, like so. They'll also go on your compressor, and then the air shocks already have a different style of these on. I'll show you that in a second. All right, so you'll need some of those. This here is an inline fuse, of course. You will need this to run from your battery or your whatever hot terminal you got. And then this will feed your switch and your compressor. So you always, and you've heard me talk, guys, never run anything off your hot terminal that's not fused. Now I know some of you will say, well, now wait, some of the stock bikes have the line wire, big gauge wire from the battery going straight to the starter. That's true, but the way they route it, nothing's touching that wire. Anything else you add to your bike from the hot terminal, make sure it is fusible. So they supplied this, that's good. By the way, this is an eBay kit, I'm pretty certain. Also, you have a 4-prong relay, and it's a standard relay. You can get these at any parts store. A 30, 85, 87, and 86. You might see some with an 87A. So just different relays. And it does come with this nice relay adapter, connector, I guess is what it's called. If I can turn my mouth right, there we go. And that's just nice to be able to do your wires. The only thing bad about that is you can't have this connected while you're looking at what wires what, because your numbers are on the bottom. But it is nice. Now you can build your own connectors with just your own terminal and stick it on there. But this is nice, a little more sturdy, and it's a good addition. Doesn't have to have this, but you do need a relay. Next, it comes with a switch. This is a 3-position switch. So you've got a middle that is off. You've got an up that you must hold up to keep up. Okay, that usually I position the up to compressor is on. Air is filled into the shocks, and the bike goes up. You have a neutral, which is off. It always goes back to that. Then you have a down, and I usually hook that to my dump valve. So you'll have 3 wires going out, okay? This wire will actually be your trigger wire for your compressor that goes through the relay. That'll go up. One wire is hot for the trigger. Next wire goes to your dump valve that tells it, there's a magnet inside that dump valve. When power hits it, it snaps shut, it opens up that valve and the air dumps out. Okay? So you will need a three-way switch. Now there are some switches that you'll push up and it'll stay up by itself. Don't buy those. You need a monetary two-way up and down switch. I think it's called monetary. And you will need your compressor. This is a standard eBay, Amazon compressor. I believe the name of it is Volcano. Wow. There's 3 different types. This is the one that comes with the bracket that I'll show you here in a second. So here is your air compressor. It has 4 mounting holes in the bottom. It will also come with some rubber strips that you will lay under this for vibration, and mounting bolts and nuts and lock washers as well. So this is your main worker of your system. You have a ground, you have a hot that will run to your relay, then your switch will trigger the relay to turn on and send power to your compressor. You have an outlet here that they just cap off for you. One of your little connectors will go into that, and these all have Teflon on them, but I recommend let's wrap some more Teflon around it. That way you know you got a good seal, and of course we'll test everything as well. This compressor is just a motor, like what you'd see on a small starter, a big heat shrink, and with the pump. And so this gets, as you can see, hot. You will need to place this somewhere that it can breathe. This heat sink needs to breathe. It doesn't need airflow through it, but it needs to be able to breathe. So if you put this in a bag and mount it in your bag, that's no good. You'll burn this up. It'll get hot, it could touch something and melt something. So make sure you place it somewhere where it can breathe. Most units you can place on most bikes with this bracket. And he bought this kit with this bracket. This is a good thick bracket, steel bracket. And this has 2 threaded holes here and 2 oblong holes here that you can put the compressor on and move it around as you need it. This cutout here goes under your exhaust hangers in the rear of the bike. It's got a cutout here for your brace that comes up, and this usually tucks away and fits in really nicely underneath the bag right up against your rear brake rotor, and we'll look at that. So that's the components you will need. If you don't get this bracket in a kit, these things run about 50 bucks unless you make your own. Time you make your own, the time you've got into it, you would have been better off buying one. So I recommend getting a kit that has the bracket with it. It'll save you a lot of time. Now these instructions, although they are accidentally soaked in oil, they're pretty good. And they tell you some cautions and how to route stuff and what to be careful with. They show your wiring for your relay. They even show how to mount the compressor on the bracket. They show the specs of it. They also have a little troubleshooting guide and a little wiring diagram on the rear as well. So pretty good instructions, no pictures, but this is what you need. Now, can you build this kit on your own? You can. You can buy the dump valve, pretty common. You can buy the air compressor, very common. You can buy, of course, the relays, any hardware store. You can buy your monetary two-way switches. You can go and buy these or order them online. You can buy all your fittings. You can buy the relay at your parts store and the connector. You can even buy the plate online by itself. When you add all that up, and all your hardware, the kit comes out to be a little bit cheaper. So I would recommend going with a kit. They're very common. So let's get all this out of the way, lay out some paper, and start just drawing out how we're going to wire this, how we're going to run our air fittings, and that way we've got a good game plan before we even go to the bike and start it. So before we go to the bike, let's kind of draw out a game plan of what we want, the components we need, where to place them. I like to start with the compressor because that's our main component and how we're going to route that. So compressor. All right. Now this is going to be mounted on the right side of the bike, and when we do that, it's going to go, the air hose is going to go up and over where your right shock is. So here's the right shock here, and the air hose is going to go up here. Now this has a fitting on it right here. So what we need to do is run us a T right here. Off that T will run down into this fitting. Off this T will come on up the side of the rear fender on the right side, and it'll start to go across your bike. We can go ahead and draw this out and call this the rear fender, with the front of the bike going that way. Now we will need another T here. And of course this air hose will come off this T and come over to our left shock over here, which has a fitting on it as well. Now we have this other T here that will run down to usually I like to put these in the side panel cover, the dump valve underneath there. So there'll be a fitting for your dump valve, a little nut on top to adjust it, and that's called the dump valve. It might have a fancier name than that, but that's it. Now, that's the simplicity of wiring for your lines, your air hoses, and that's it. Of course, you'll zip tie these to where they'll fit. When you zip tie, now don't crank down on your zip tie. It could pinch the line, so you want to have them secure but not too tight. Now remember, when the air ride goes down, your fender and frame go down. Your swing arm stays on the ground with the wheel on the ground. When it goes up, your frame goes up from the swing arm, okay? Your compressor is connected to the frame, your shock is connected to the top of the frame and the swing arm at the bottom. The fender is connected to the frame. So everything you have here as far as airlines stays connected to the frame. So there's not going to be any type of movement as far as these hoses moving up and down. But I say that to say this: when you're routing your air lines, leave a little slack in there. Don't route them super tight. Leave a little slack so that if things do kind of move, it doesn't pull a hose out. But this here is all of the air lines that we'll need. Now let's look at our wiring. So what we have as far as wiring, and let's see how we can lay this out so it doesn't get in the way of other things, but maybe we can't. Okay, we've got a switch. Okay, a little switch here. And this switch goes neutral in the middle, down for the dump valve, up for the, so maybe we do it then like this. Up for compressor, down for the dump valve. So on the switch, let's see where our switch is. Let's get our switch out. There's our relay. Okay. So on our switch, we have this 3 wires. Now they can pre-shrink like this, so we can't see where these wires go, but you can kind of feel where they go. Now don't assume that when you go up, it's going to power this when you go up, because this is on the upside. That's not always the case. So what you'll need to do is hook this to power and actually test with a multimeter. Make sure this black one, which is at the top, gets power when this does go up. You could even do, you don't have to do voltage, you can do continuity as well. So set it on your ohms and make sure. Well, let's just go ahead and do that so that way we know. All right, so we got our meter here. We'll go to the horseshoe. We'll take our switch. The center, which is the red, should be the power in. Make sure we get a good connection there. And then we'll start with the black wire, which is on the top. There should be no connection here. Now when we hit the switch up, we should have a connection. Okay, no connection. When we hit the switch down, we now have a connection. So that's what I was telling you. Don't assume that because this black wire is at the top and you switch it to go up, that's the wire you need. In this case, it's opposite. That's why you check these. So when I push down, the top wire activates. Now to double check the switch, when we hook to the other one and we go up, then that activates this yellow and green wire. When we go down, nothing. Up activates that. So I'm glad we checked, because they are opposite. Now it's really no big deal, because you can hook these up either way. This can go to the dump valve, this can go to the trigger for your compressor. And if you get them backwards, when you go to hook this into your side panel, or in this customer's case, it's going all the way up to the front on his handlebars, you can just turn the switch around if you want it to go up to lift up and down to dump. If you put it in its backwards, just loosen this up, turn it around, and tighten it back up. So no big deal, but it's always good to check. And now we know we've got a good switch. So on this switch, the compressor to go up is actually our, what was that? That's actually our yellow and green. This is our red. This is our black, which goes to the dump valve. So on your dump valve, you will have two switches, or two wires, forgive me. Now on these two wires, you'll have usually a red and a black, which means black is ground and red is your power. The black on this, off the dump valve, the black will be your ground. Then the red will go here to your switch. Okay? So that when you dump down, the black feeds into the red, which kind of seems odd on this. And that will activate this magnet inside and it will dump. Now, the relay will be here. And it's a 4-pin relay, so it'll have 4 wires coming out. Now, on a 4-pin relay, which is a standard relay, you've got a 30, an 87, an 85, and an 86. On a 5-pin, you would have an 87A. Don't use 5 pins on these, because a 5-pin relay stays active one way or the other. 87 is either hot or 87A is either hot. 5-pin relays are usually used on like a high-low beam kind of setting, so you won't need that. on your relays, your 30 is always positive to your battery. It's always fused. So on our 30, let's draw us a little battery here. Negative, positive. That's our battery. We'll have a hot coming off the battery. It will be fused. And I believe it's a 20 amp fuse that's in it. All right, so off that, you'll have your 30. The 30 will go to your fuse, to the battery. So this feeds the relay, okay? Off of your relay, you'll have an 85 and an 86. The 85 comes all the way down. It is a ground, okay? So what we're left with is power in, ground out. Two more pins left. One will be the trigger, and then one will be the actual feed to the compressor. So on your compressor, you have a ground and you have a power, a hot. So the compressor has a negative. It also has a positive. So this compressor, since it's on a relay, doesn't need an inline fuse, and we can run that up, power into 30. When this is activated, the switch goes down, sends power from 30 to 87. So we want our 87 to come over here. This is our 87. So the only one left is our 86, and that is what we're going to run to our switch to activate the compressor. So this is 86. It's a yellow and green that runs up to there. So our switch, the only thing that's left not connected is our red center line in the switch. And that is what I do with the switch. Here. So this is going to be our power in to the switch, 12 volts. So we're going to run this down all the way over and run it in on this side of the fuse. We don't want it on this side, because if something happens and this line right here grounds out, we want it on this side of the fuse, so this fuse will pop and not melt down the switch, the battery, the relay, possibly even the compressor. So in a nutshell, as weird as this looks, this is what we've got. I could have laid it out better, but we were just kind of building it on the fly. Now on your relay, we've got our numbers here. However, when we hook this up, it covers up our numbers and we can't see them. And for some reason, you've got lines that are the same color. So how do we know what's what when we're wiring and hooking everything up? Because if you do it without the relay on and try to hook things up, well, wait a minute, how does this thing go in? And you could have wires backwards. So a good trick that I use is to take a little chalk pen and find your numbers there on the bottom side, and you'll have to kind of get the light right to see it. This is 87, so I'll go up here, I'll write 87. All right, then this here is 85. 80, it's hard to write on here. 85. Then this down here across from your 87 is your 30. And that leaves, what, 87 as a switch? No? Did I write 87 already? Yep, 87. Leaves 86, and we'll check that. Yes, 86. 86. So now when we hook our relay up, now we know where our wires are going. So now when we wire things, we can keep this connector on, and it's a whole lot easier for us to wire. So at this point, we're ready to go to the bike, and we'll start doing our air lines and making sure they're up where we need them and out of the way. Then we'll go back with all of our wiring. Now, for this bracket, we can go ahead and hook the compressor up to this. You'll see all these different, I actually give you 4. However, you don't need 4. You just need these to set in there like that. That will set down on top. And then this will hook to your exhaust hangers on the rear of your bike. You have these here. Always run your bolts with a washer through the top. That way, if a nut does get loose, if you had it this way, then the nut got loose and come off, this would fall out. So I always run them down from the top with a washer. You'll run them all the way through. Then on the bottom side, another washer, a lock washer, and then your nut. So let's get this mounted on the plate. You can mount it off the bike. Don't mount this first, this plate first, and then try to mount this. It's really hard to get to. So I'll mount this first, then I'll go and mount the plate on the hanger with the pipe. On this bike, the pipes are off, so we're not going to mount it at this time, but we are going to hook everything up and start on these air lines. So we'll start on this side of the compressor. And I have it mounted here. So on this side, I drop my bolts in the top, nuts on the bottom. However, on this side, this is threaded, these two. So I had to run my bolts in the bottom, then nuts on top, and this is threaded as well. So these two on the back, they're not going anywhere. And I mounted mine facing this way. Now, some people will mount their compressors backwards this way. And it'll set back in, about right back in here. Now, the bracket's still the same, but they turn the compressor around this way. Then they'll run their wiring and their hose out this way, all the way up through here. What I like to do is run it this way. This will set down under here. Then my line runs right up, just right up here, and my wiring right up here as well. And I don't have to worry about looping it around the fender. Now you do have to worry about the brake disc, brake rotor, but you'll zip tie it here just loosely and up here as well, and you won't have any trouble. So let me get some bolts so I can hang this on the hanger since I don't have the exhaust on. That way it's kind of stable, or it's at least up there, and then we can start working on it. Now I've got the compressor just mounted on this exhaust hanger, so it's going to move and move back and forth wherever the exhaust sets. But I have tons of clearance back here. I can get my whole fingers back behind this plate and between the rotor, almost the whole finger back behind this. And so this bracket's going to work very well. And now my wires are going to run right up through here and not be in the way of anything. So let's go ahead and start, before we do any wiring, let's get our hose fittings routed. So we'll get the hose out. And be careful with these, you can kink them. And if you do that, then your hose is toast. So just be careful. All right, so we got our hose unraveled. We'll take our little stopper out there, and we'll get our fitting. Now to put our fitting on, they already have tape on them, but I will put more on. And I'm going to go in the direction, I'm going to wrap it in the direction that I am going to screw this in. That way the tape stays on there and doesn't come off. I'm going to be careful not to cover up my hole there. And that's all you need. Yes, it already comes with it on there, but I like to put a little extra on. I don't even know if you could see me wrapping that or not. I need to pay attention to you guys too. 10 millimeter is what these are, and I like to do them by a wrench so that I don't over tighten them. A socket would fit over the end. Now this is made where you can put a wrench on this as well, but you usually don't have to. As long as you get a good air sealed, tight seal, you're good. Doesn't take a lot of torque. All right, now we can go ahead and just pop this hose in. Make sure it's good and rounded, clean. Just push it in, you'll feel it seat down. Give a little tug, and it's in there. Now our line is going to come right up against here like this. Now with the air out of these shocks, this is at its lowest position. So this is as low as it's going to go. As this raises, this whole frame here will raise up, bags and all. This will stay. This will stay. So you don't want to zip tie here because this will pull up. So leave this loose. Some even like to route it behind, but I don't. I route it in the front just with a little bit of space. And then I will actually zip tie up here at the neck, probably on this side, and your bags will set up against here. So we're going to need a T somewhere about right here. So we'll get our little tool that they supplied for us, put that in the groove, and we'll give it a snap. And we had a good clean break there. And it's important that when you break it, when you snap it, which I'll redo this to show you, you want this to set in here even, so it gets a good even cut across. We'll take one of our T-joints, we'll pop that in there. That felt nice and good. And then we can take this other end that's going to run across our fender in the front here. Now we just need a connector to go from here to here. So it's going to be a small piece, so we can take the other end of our hose and run down in there. This is a good clean cut. We'll snap that in. And I like these because these swivel. Pretty nice setup. And I'll give a little bit of extra slack. Don't want anything tight. Make sure it's squared up. A little snip. And there we go. Nice and easy. Now we can take this and we can zip tie this T here. There's actually little holes here. Might be hard to find a zip tie small enough for that, but I'll just zip tie around the meat of the T, and that's really all you need. So as far as our air hose goes, we're almost halfway done. So I'll run me a zip in here, and I will go actually around here and through the bottom. Now, again, I'm leaving this loose. See that? I almost put my finger in there. I don't want it extra tight. So here, this is fully compressed. As this goes up, this will not move because the compressor goes up with the frame. So this will stay like this the whole time. All right, snip that off. Now it's time to place our dump valve. And our dump valve does have wiring as well. So we will need to be aware of that wherever we're going to put it. I usually like to put my dump valve somewhere that hides the line, the air line, and the wiring. So our wiring we can run pretty much up through anything here. And so maybe we'll set it somewhere in here, somewhere like that. Really pretty much we can run it about anywhere. We could even set it, I don't like that. Let's set it in here, maybe. Zip tied in there. We could even set it up here. I like that. All right, but that's going to curve around. So maybe, let me look at the other side. Okay, I've moved to the other side because there's a whole lot more real estate over here. So I can put this dump valve pretty much anywhere up in here. I can hang it. You could almost fit the compressor in there, but again, you wouldn't get much airflow. You'd smother it out. And you've got this belt here to worry about. So I think I'm going to bring the dump valve all the way over here and zip tie that thing. Probably zip tie it right in there. Have the valve go out here maybe. I could hang it from the top frame easily. Zip tie it up nice and tight right there. Have it go out and around. So you want to place this where you want it before you cut your line, of course. So it needs some thought, That's not used. I think I'm going to go right there. What do you think? I think that'll look pretty good. All right, let's get a fitting on this, and then we'll be ready to dump. All right, same deal here. I'm going to wrap more tape in the direction that it's going to screw in. You don't have to go crazy with it. It's already got some on there, but a little extra help, extra persuasion never hurts. Now your dump valve, you'll have a center hole there. This one will have a little hole up here. So some say, well, it really doesn't matter which way you use it, but this hole is going to let out a little bit more. So I'm going to set it in this way. Let me get a 10 millimeter on that. All right. Now we'll set that there. We'll zip tie around that. Now leave you some slack up here because this has got to come over the fender, which when you're doing it, you'll probably already have the fender on. So I'm going to leave quite a bit of slack. I can always take this out and trim it up if I need to. So now we're going to have to do us another T to run, break off one to the dump and one to this side. So you can run the T out here and have the line go across here and down, or you can run it in here, but then it's going to have to come out in a weird spot. So I'm going to do my T up here, still giving me a lot of room here. Run my T here, and then I can run a line here and down to my dump. Good clean cut. Good seating. Now for my dump valve, I want to go ahead and connect what I just cut off. Make sure it's seated well. Place it about where I want it. Feed the rest of the line back up. Okay, that'll set there. My line will come up that way. I could even turn it. Let's do that. I think I like that better. I'll run it behind these wires, this wiring harness. up through here. Run that like that. I think I can get a better angle on it then, and I've got my wires that can run under the frame and out up through here. All right, let me actually go ahead and zip tie this up, and that way it's not flopping around on us. Now this I can tighten tight, give it a good pull. Now the side panel will be on here, so you don't have to worry about it wiggling out, but that is good and secure and tight. And our line is up here. Our wires can now be fed through here, up around inside the panel. We'll zip tie them up here, but of course the panel will be over here, so you won't see that at all. Now our dump valve runs up here. Let's connect that to our T, which is here. I think I'll do, still leave me a little slack here. Good clean cut. Put it in here. Good seat. Do the same here. Good seat. Now we can run this over. Our fender will be here, so this will set back here. We can even tuck it down in here, and once the fender's on, zip tie it, and then we'll run it right there. We'll snap this in, seated well, and that's it. That is our wiring. Of course, once the fender gets on, and we'll clean it up a little bit, but now, as you can see, this is at the lowest setting. This will go up with the wire, so there's no tug, or I could have probably gave a little more slack there. But the good news is you got tons left. So if I wanted to make that a little longer, I'll just compress this in like this, pull the hose out. You push the hose in, compress this, and then you pull the hose back out. Okay. And I've got more. If we need to make it longer, we'll make it longer. But that is all of the wiring. That's all of the air hose. Now what we can do at this time is actually test the dump valve and test the compressor. Watch it go up and watch it come down before we put the relay and the switch on. How about we do that? Okay, I've got an external battery over here because these lines won't reach up to our battery because we don't have the relays or anything on. Right now we're just going to test the system, the compressor first, make sure it goes all the way up. Both shocks are operating and moving. I'm going to hold the bike because it's going to be lifted off that center stand if I go all the way up. So let's take off. Oh yeah. So the bike is all the way up now, and you want to be careful if you got your bike on the center stand because it'll come off of it. That's how high these things go. Nobody would ever ride this high, hopefully, but they go this high. Now let's make sure our dump valve is going to work. Just hooking it straight to the battery here. Oh yeah. All the way down. And as you'll notice, as we move things, this line never kinked, it never moved because it goes with the frame. So I think we're in good shape. Now what I want to do now is let's raise it up a little where it's still on the center stand, but let's put some air in it and let's check for leaks. So we'll air it up a little bit. All right, that's good. We'll go tighten the center stand up just for safety. There we go. Put a little more air in it. Ooh. Ooh. Drop it down a bit. Drop it down. All right, so we got our shocks about half compression here. And now we can take, you can take about anything you want, if I can find. You can use some soapy water, Windex, really doesn't matter. So we're going to take this right here. It's about under half a load, so it's about halfway up. So it does have air in these lines. So we're going to spray these connector joints, every one of them, and we're going to look for bubbles. If it bubbles, that's bad, it's got a leak. So far, so good. So far, so good. And you can even spray in these joints here that's connected into the shock. They come from the factory connected in, but you never know how well they connected them in. You might think it's something that you have done wrong when in all actuality, it's not. Okay, we're here at this joint. Good. 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 We'll check our compressor joint. And it's good. Now we can go ahead and dump the rest out, the rest of the air out. And I increased the lift on that center stand, so that's as low as it's going to go. So now it's time for the wiring, and this job will be complete. I found a good place to put this relay. There's a little bolt right here. Nothing really connected to it. And I'm going to take that up, slide that in there, and this will actually set below the battery. So I think that'll be a pretty good location for us. Of course, you could stuff it down in here and just have it hanging out there. We might just do that. I didn't want a bunch of wires coming over. There is a little cubby hole in here. You could just set it down in there as well, but it would be flopping around and get hot off this pipe maybe. So I think up here under the seat, easy to access. If this relay goes bad, pop it out, pop another one in, and you're good to go. Still got the connector there. So I think that's going to be our best option. I didn't want to put it up here either, so we'll do it there. Now, this customer has a jump box. Well, not a jump box, I don't know, a connection box. And so you can hook a negative and positive 1, 2, 3, 4 in here. And then this just runs to your battery. However, negative, positive, and then this is a key, hot. So this will not feed in here hot. Even if you hook this right to the battery and this to the battery, this box will not work unless this trigger has positive. So he's going to be running amps and speakers and all that. That's primarily what this will be for. So we're not going to use that, and here's why. Think about this when you're doing your own. If you have the bike turned off and you want to raise and lower your airbags, if it's keyed, if it's set up to be keyed, like to this box, then it will not, the compressor and the dump valve will not turn on unless the key is on. And I know a lot of guys don't like that. They want to be able to let their bike down even after they turn the key off and just hit the switch and let it drop. So we'll be wiring this straight. That means that even with the key off, you'll be able to hit that switch up and down and activate it. So that's how we're going to do our wiring. Now we'll go to the other side. I've already got the hot hooked into the battery, and because it's the fused, And I took the fuse out, so there's nothing going to spark with the fuse out. Our power to our relay are 30 on here, which is here. This green wire will run power straight. Now we can also get power here for our switch. Our toggle switch up and down, we can run into here as well. Now this customer switch is going to be way up on the neck of the bike. So I'm just going to wire it up, tape it up for now, just to show you what you would do if you were to put your switch down here on the cover panel or on the other side of the cover panel. Okay, so we're going to take our number 30 from our relay. That's our power source in. This is connected straight to the battery. It is fused. We're also going to add our hot trigger switch in here. I know this is very crude, and I'm not going to leave it like this. Like I said, I got to route that switch all the way up to the front, so I'm just going to, wish I had some wing nuts, some house wing nuts. You'd be surprised at the bikes I see come in here with home electrical wing nuts on them and speaker wiring. So there's our switch hot, and now one of these will run to our relay for our trigger for the compressor, and the other one to our dump valve. So our dump valve is right here. Doesn't matter which one you run to the dump valve, because remember, you can change that switch by rotating it up and down to make it work for your application. Again, just taping it up for now, just to show you how you'd run it. And then this is our negative for our dump valve. We'll connect it all. There's going to be 3 grounds, one for your compressor, one for your dump valve, and one for your relay. So we'll connect those all together and get it grounded out. Okay, so the ground for our relay is number 85. We will find that, 85. We will hit this with our ground, and I'm going to make that a little bit longer. All right. Wonder what Jeff Bridges is doing today. He's always had cool hair. All right, our ground, 85 is our ground. We will ground those together. And then we've got our compressor ground as well. So right now we've got most of everything, kind of done. Now what goes out of our compressor for our switch, so we have our, where's our switch? Right here. And it's going to go, well, we got these backwards, but it doesn't matter. So we're going to go to 86 with our switch. So our 86 here. This is a switch that's going to trigger the relay to work. That's going to air our compressor up. We'll tape that up. Just temporary. Don't ever do wires like this, please. Okay. And then what goes into our 85? Is that all of our 85? 85 is ground. Okay, I'll let this up because we've got to do our compressor ground as well. Switch does not have a ground, so our switch is basically done. We still have this one wire, 87. Now 87 is our wire that goes down to our compressor. So all that we have left is the compressor here, positive, and the ground, negative, and then all this ground runs to the battery ground or to a good ground on your frame. Now make sure it's a good ground. You might have to take some of the powder coating off to get a good ground. If you're going to do it to the frame, make sure it's good ground. Since he's got this box, I'm just going to do it to the battery because there won't be that many additions on that. Now we're back on the other side of the bike, the right side. This is the wires that run, let me see if I can get you in here. Here's the wires that run to the compressor. We're on the other side of the bike now. And you'll see that the ground has a eyelet, and the hot has this female terminal here. I'm going to snip both of these off, and here's why. Snipping them off because there is not enough wire to run up here to what I need. And I don't want it tight. I want to leave some slack because I'm going to put all this kind of zip tied together, okay? So I'm going to cut these ends off. I'm going to reuse this as my ground to the battery. And then I'm going to extend these two wires out, throw this away or put it in a drawer to be used for later. All right, so we'll just snip. Where are you at? All right, so we'll just snip this off. I'm going to leave a little room so I can reuse this if I need it. And I'm definitely going to leave room for this. I'm going to go ahead and get this ready just to kind of wire up for us. Since it's a ground, I ain't got to worry about it much. Now we will need to extend these. So when you're extending these wires, make sure you use a wire that's equal to the gauge. A little bit bigger is fine, never go smaller. So we're going to extend these out so we can reach up to our relay with the hot and our ground source for the ground. Okay, I've got some longer wires here. Extend the same kind of, same gauge as the other. We'll tape this up. This is our hot. Then we'll run up here and this goes to our last wire on the relay right here, which is number 85. And let me check. Nope, that's 87. Oh, I'm sorry, 87 does go to the compressor, my bad. So let's tape that up since it's a hot wire. Now all we have left is our ground that we're going to extend. You definitely never want to decrease wire size on a ground wire. The ground wire is actually what heats up the most. So we're going to run this up here. This will run to our two grounds right here, one from the dump valve, one from the compressor, and one from the relay. And now we can just kind of do them all together with this eyelet. It doesn't have to be taped up since it's ground, but I will. Again, very rudimentary, just for demonstration purposes. Okay. Now we'll come over here and we'll connect our ground. All right, we should get no activity if we did everything right. So cross your fingers and cross your toes. All right, so far so good. Let's snug that down. Now our fuse can go in if we've done everything right. If not, good luck to you. Get the fire extinguisher ready. There we go. We can quickly check our work since we've made our own diagram here. Our 30 from the relay runs straight to the battery. Straight to the battery, fuse is in. Also, we have our hot for our switch ran in right here after the fuse, okay? So battery, fuse, then our switches and our relay. That's important. This thing blows, it doesn't damage or melt down any wiring. 86 goes to our switch. 86 here, boom, right to our switch right there. 87 goes down to our compressor. 87 here to our compressor hot. And lastly, 85 back here goes to our ground. Now, we've got our air lines already taken care of. Our compressor negative runs up here and there into our negative. And then our dump valve here is to our hot there. To our ground, and then into our switch. So that is everything. And now let's test it out, see how it operates. That's up. That's down. That's up. That's down. Awesome. Now, again, you can adjust how much air comes out of the valve here. I never mess with it. They're always kind of set to what's comfortable. We've already tested our fittings, so we know there's no leak. Now all you'd have to do is just clean up your wiring, do your soldering. And I tell you, one of you guys on the comments really turned me on. Let me get them out here. Let me get one out. One of you folks in the comments really got me turned on to these things. That's the connectors with the soldering in it, and you just put these on and get your torch or heat gun, and the solder melts right down into the wires twisted together, and I don't have to have my soldering iron out and having to connect them. And man, these have been a lifesaver. So whoever mentioned that, I'll go back in comments and look at that. Thank you so much. I have used these. Well, I use the red the most. That's usually the most of the wiring on the bikes that I do. And I can't tell you, I mean, I'm already out of these, had to buy more, how much of a lifesaver these have been. So thank you guys so much for commenting that or recommending that. Now the other bike we're going to do right beside it has this air tank, and this is a little different. Now this type of tank hangs on the bag hanger on the left side of the bike. However, if you have dual exhaust comes out both sides, this will not work. But he wants it down inside his bag. Now on custom bags, this will not fit, but in his bag it will. We'll have to delete this tab, maybe this tab as well, and set it down in. Now these are a different beast, okay? These will be wired completely different, and we'll have some components on them that are different. So let me get you down here. You will have the same relay, the same switch. You will have 2 inline fuses, and you'll have a lot of your connectors, but you will have 2 dump valves, okay? They're identical. They're the same as what we just put on the other bike, but you'll have 2 of those. The reason for that, as you can tell by this diagram here, your tank, it says gas tank, but it's not a gas tank, it's an air tank. I wouldn't want to put gas in it. Your tank will have a pressure switch that will screw on top here. It's just like an old school brake switch, hydraulic brake switch, where the compressor will not kick on unless air in this tank is depleted and this valve in here is open. So when there's pressure in this tank, this valve, this little check valve in here, will close. This will tell the compressor not to run. The reason you add a tank is that when you go to lift up your bike, the compressor always runs. With a tank, when you go to lift up the bike, the air in this tank is sent right to your shocks. So it goes up about twice the speed. So this is a little check valve in here. I forget what they call it, pressure switch, which is the correct term. That senses the pressure of the tank. It tells the compressor when to run and not to run. One is ground, one is hot. They're both the same color, so it doesn't matter which side you do. Now the reason for these 2 valves is on this diagram here, which is a lot better than the other diagrams we have. You'll also have this, you'll have this safety switch here that goes on the end. It's just a blow-off valve. In case there's too much pressure in the tank and the compressor somehow fails to turn off, this will pop and it will not blow up this tank and blow up the side bags and blow up the car beside you. So that's a must, goes in this end. In the other end, there's a hole as well that a normal fitting goes on. And your airline will just go into that. You got a T, and then it'll run to the shocks and then run to the compressor. Still pretty simple, but you have these additional magnetic dump valves. And you have two, okay? So they will run one from your compressor and tank, and then a second one that runs to your shocks. So these are linked together, dual dumps, and that's recommended for the air tank. If you're not running the air tank, then you don't have to do all this extra. But as far as your wiring goes, it's normal. Okay, so you'll still have your battery, your inline fuse, you'll still have your relay, you'll still have your toggle switch. All that's the same. The only thing different in an air tank addition is, of course, your blow-off valve, your pressure switch, which tells the compressor when to run, and it's got two dump valves instead of the one. Now, one more thing just to let you be aware of. On this this bike we're going to do next, which has the air tank, this has a different valve coming off of the shock. So this valve you will actually twist off, put your line through. There will actually be a little rubber O-ring in there. And then as you tighten this plastic tab down, it compresses that line in. So that's the only difference. Not all of them come with the nice hookups like we saw on the one that we just did. So you might run into this. It's no big deal. They're just prone to leak a little bit more. Some people double O-ring them, and that's fine. And they usually come with the O-rings, but if not, you can go to your hardware store and pick up a box of assorted O-rings and find the one that fits it. Well, folks, thank you so much for hanging out in the shop with me today. Just one more time. You want to hear it one more time? Yep. Yep. Well, that's neater than neat things. Hey, if you hadn't yet subscribed, please do that. Don't take but just a second, and I think it's still free to you. Also, hey, we're getting big time now. We have a merchandise store. You can go to butlercustoms.com, or you can just click on the YouTube video you're watching. Down at the bottom, there should be a little thing that says store. Click that. Also, on our live events, we're going to try to do once a week live chats where you can ask questions, comments, ways we can improve the channel, or just hang out with me in the shop in the evening time. I think you guys have voted so far on a Friday with a close runner-up of Tuesday. Both of those worked fine with me. Then once everybody's voted, next week I'll say, okay, what time works best? I know I had some folks reach out and say, hey, we're overseas, so if you do it at night, it's like 1 in the morning for us. So I'll try to accommodate everybody best I can. But I just want to thank you guys so much for all the support, all the words of wisdom you've given me, and just for hanging out here today with me. I hope this has helped you out, and don't feel scared of doing it yourself now that you see how simple it is. So hey, do me a favor and tell your mama now I said hi.